Hello and welcome to the Friday wrap up here on Landy's Crypto Corner. Today is January 31st, 2025. And although it is Friday, Bitcoin is working on its Saturday candle already because the daily close has come in, which means that the monthly close has come in as well. And we're not starting out with the Bitcoin price chart right away here. We're first going to look at the Bitcoin Exchange Reserve all exchanges pane here on CryptoQuant, so that I can illustrate kind of a key point here before we get into talking about price. And that is that, ever since the spot ETFs, Bitcoin has been going down in terms of exchange reserves. Well, what does that mean? That means that you're seeing outflows of Bitcoin from exchanges, and it's going to some of these big institutional players. And, this is likely going to continue this way for a long time, which means that there's less circulating supply of Bitcoin. So when there's even smaller inflows or smaller outflows, we get more volatility because there's less supply circulating. So in this case, I wanted to kind of point this out because some of the things I'm going to talk about on the monthly aren't necessarily bullish, and they're not necessarily bearish either. We're starting to get a look on Bitcoin that I have spoken about, and I spoke a little bit about last year before. Well, it would have been November into December, and then December into January. This is kind of some stuff that I spoke about. So let's go ahead and take a look at Bitcoin price. This is the daily. We'll start out with the daily just so that I can give you the lay of the land of what's going on for the daily price action here. And that is that Bitcoin has put in a lower high. So we have a lower low, equal low kind of a structure here with a lower low swing. Let's go ahead and get the arrow tool out here. So we have a lower low swing, and we essentially have equal low closes, a little bit of a higher low close here, I guess. But we have a lower high now in after the Friday candle close. But Bitcoin is still in the strong half of the Bollinger Bands here on the daily. And as long as it's above here, we're generally looking at this as being neutral in and around, neutral to bullish in and around the basis band, as long as we're seeing daily closes above here. If we see the basis band pass price on a close open basis, then it's going to shift a little bit, but still not that concerning. We also see that the Bollinger Band set is pinching in here, indicating that we are in a consolidation, and we can see that reflected, of course, in price. So the bands are catching up to this low volatility environment, which is also denoted here with the BBWP, which is the Bollinger Band width percentile measurement. It's just how volatile is price in relation to the bands, both inside the set of bands and outside of the set of bands. And in this case, Bitcoin's gearing up for a large move. That's likely not going to kick off right away. We'll see if it does. It could kick off soon. Wouldn't take much to actually kick off an expansive move, in this case above the upper second standard deviation, which is right around the highs at just under $108,000, coming in at 107,824. We would see Bitcoin expand back to the high side here at that 108,388 to the all-time high up here at 109,360 or so. Now, if Bitcoin were to close above these highs, then we're starting to look for a more aggressive, expansive move to the upside. Otherwise, just closing above the upper second standard deviation is only meeting one point of criteria, and that would be kicking off volatility expansion to the highs, possibly higher on a swing. But we need to see closes above to actually lock in that expansive look. And we can see the upper third standard deviation is right there at 110,500, almost 600, 110,586 in this case. And, that's part of the key area to the upside that I'm looking at. Above price, which is now trading at about 102, we're going to take a look at support and resistance. But, between 101 and 104, that's kind of the main area, this high over here. Above there, we're looking 104 to 106, which is kind of close opens over here on the highs. And then above there, 106 to 108, 108 to 110, where that upper third standard deviation is. We could even see 110 to 112 before actual expansion on the Bollinger Bands would kick off to the upside. And in this case, to the downside, anywhere below the lower first and second areas is going to be key to watch. Lower first is coming in at just under $100,000. at this low side, higher low structure right here at around 99,500. Anywhere below there, I would look to the lower second, which is now at 96,722. It's above an area of support that I'm going to show you in just a moment. Anywhere below there would be expansion into the support side structure on the lows here, and that would be we'll define that there. But below 96, we're roughly looking down to, it could save itself on swings, but starts to close below there. Lower second would be expansion into an area of support. Anywhere below that area of support in general, I'm looking 92 to 88,700, where this low got front run by $300 at our support area by $300 down there at $89,000, which would be fair game. Bulls don't want to see any breakdowns from there, because then it's already in an expansive posture and headed down further. Now let's go ahead and turn on support and resistance real quick so that we can actually see what I'm talking about in that regard. You can see that we've got a few areas of support, and we've got the green side here. Green means go, and closing above, we're going to run the all-time high. This is 106 to that 108,400. Anywhere above there, we're running up here to that 109,500, 110 area, even probably somewhere around the upper third standard deviation above. Still would take it $2,000 at a time to the upside until 112, and then above there we would move to 115, and then $5,000 chunks, 115 to 120, 120 to 125, 125 to 130, and we'll take a look at that on the higher term time frames and discuss it in just a moment. But Bitcoin is right in an area of support. This was a prior area of resistance. Bitcoin moved through very, very quickly to the upside to make the all-time high at the time at that 108,388, and then dumped right back through it and rejected this zone between 101 and 104. It was trying to hold up around the $95,000 to $96,000 range, and then dump down to front run that 92K down below. Got a little bit of prior daily resistance and support put in this this higher low over here, which is one of the areas why this one of the areas of interest, which is why this is marked right here. But it's not like particularly strong support or resistance in this area in terms of swings, but it has been decent for some closes and an area of interest that price has moved to a few times. We did see that, it did try to come down here and test that area just below 96K at 95,540 before swinging all the way down, sitting above it, rejecting this area, putting in a lower high, and then this kind of governed this lower low structure down here that actually ran the actual zone of interest down here between 92 and 88.7. Before moving back testing on the daily for support, right into overhead resistance, dumping down, and then rejecting this area again around $95,000 to $96,000. So it is pretty key that if Bitcoin does start to falter below 100 and $1,000, and then start to test in and around the low side structure here, and possibly even into that lower second above 96, if it starts to get closes below, we're looking for expansion into this support area, and possibly below if it fails. Down to 94 would be fair game, but any closures under here, and it's more biased to go test that 92 to 88.7 area, which is a 1.168 Fibonacci level at 88,700. That's also where this higher low swing came in. And, between the 1.168 and the 1.272, this is a fib extension off of the $69,000 prior cycle high down to the low at $15,500, and it's worked out quite well, both on the way up at the 1.168. Again, not 1.618, which is much further to the upside. The 1.168 or 16.8% above that $69,000 prior cycle high. We saw daily resistance come in. It moved through and then found this area as pretty much perfect support. And to the upside here, we got our 1272 tagged, moved through, And then we saw price kind of sitting and oscillating around that 1272, which is 27.2% above the prior cycle high. Now, a few things to note about RSI here. We do have a drive of regular bearish divergence that has populated now with this particular lower high. Now, what I will tell you is that that's primarily coming from like this drive all the way back here, which is kind of crazy. It's, corrective at this point. It's not really in trend. And we do have, an uptrending structure here. For the moment outside of the swings, but on a close, still an uptrending structure with its first lower high now painted as of the Friday closure. So what does that mean? Consolidation. We see it across the board with the bands, with the BBWP, which is the volatility metric, measuring price as it relates to the bands. In terms of volatility, it is direction neutral, by the way. And then we have momentum down here. And, trend, support, and resistance, volatility, and then momentum. First three make up momentum, right? And you want to take all of them and evaluate the confluences. One of the big things that I have mentioned a few times is you can do trendline regressions here, and you can see that Bitcoin has broken down from a trendline regression area of interest, but it's still holding the zone of support here. So if this starts to fall apart, that will validate this break of this trendline regression. If this continues to head down and Bitcoin continues to hold support, then we're looking for a little bit of a bullish reset and possibly a higher low being put in there. And again, that would be on closes above $104,000 or $101,000, and even better if we saw closes back above the top side there at 104,000. You see that 104,000. 300 or so would turn this back to the upside to make this a deviation. If it did that in the Saturday candle, wouldn't necessarily be looking for that, but we could see that happen. Never know. Let's go ahead and talk about the higher term time frames, though. Let's dig into this because Bitcoin did not meet criteria that I wanted to see it meet for the January closure. And that was closing above the upper second standard deviation. It closed right on it, so it did not trigger volatility expansion in terms of BBWP. It actually rejected that volatility expansion, which means that, it's nothing crazy here. Consolidating well between the upper first and upper second is actually a really good thing. It's about if price does lose the upper first standard deviation, then we're looking for price to head down towards that basis band at minimum, which would be a retest of the prior highs down here, 70, the 73 to $70,000. Now the upper first standard deviation is coming in at 84,482, so basically 84.5. There is some daily significance in this area. We have this line in the sand that you often see me draw here in the support and resistance chart at $85,000. Why is that significant? After this compression to expansion, that was the first bearish candle, and the low is at $85,000. And it's, we could see price testing down here if this structure does fall apart and fall through some of our supports here. Then we're looking for these order block candles on the daily, with the line in the sand there being that $85,000. We don't want to see closes below there. If we want to see if you're looking for Bitcoin to kind of hold up and not test violently to the downside, to be quite honest, even if it is just on a swing basis. But there is a few encouraging things going on here to the downside. Basis band on the monthly is at 60,700. So of course, again, that's a 20 simple moving average. Bitcoin has deviated, nearly 2 standard deviations away from it at this current moment. But you can see that the upper second standard deviation, which is, how we're measuring volatility in this case, is right at the local highs and the all-time high area at 108,252. That does mean, because the upper second is there, we would like to see the February candle close above there, and of course break out above the now new all-time high at 109, 400 to 500 or so. that would look good. I would look for, price to eventually start testing further up into that upper third standard deviation, which you can see is up there now at $132,000. Now, if we were going to pull the that same macro fib level of interest, is going to be that 1414, which is at $128,000. So it would be fair game. And even if this month does start to close daily candles back above, this new month of February, close daily candles back above that 108, 250, run the highs and higher and start working its way up towards the, 115 to 120 range, then we're looking 125 to 130 anyway. Throw a wick at the upper third wouldn't be out of the ordinary above there as well. I will tell you, though, this looks like it just wants to grind. That is something that, unless February gets rolling to the upside here soon, this looks like it just wants to grind it out for a little bit longer, maybe through the first week of February or something like that. And then we see some maybe resolution of this range, or at minimum a more volatile move, as the compression on the daily for Bitcoin is setting up for a larger volatile move. Again, if it's to the downside of the range, it would be volatility expansion into the lows. If they break, then it gets nasty for the bulls. But otherwise, it's volatility expansion to the upside would be new highs. And structure's fine here. I'm going to tell you, though, I don't like the look of Bitcoin grinding out without getting hitting expansion again on the monthly. It's not a good look for the bulls. It does. That's what's making me a little tentative. And, I've talked about this before. We have to very carefully watch the first quarter into second quarter transition, because that's going to be the time period in which, if this puts in a high, we have to watch very closely what happens next. I don't think that the bull run is over, by the way, even if it did put in a monthly high. And we don't know if that's going to occur just yet, but I'm not liking the look of volatility as it stands right now. Monthly is pointed back to the upside here, of course, with closes coming in above 92,720, and Bitcoin will have momentum back to the upside. Now, we also need to be cognizant of potential bearish divergence if we did see a high. Like, let's say February closed bearish. We are looking at the possibility of getting our first drive bearish divergence on the monthly for this particular trend. Yes, I see this over here, and there would be bearish divergence there, but it's about in-trend bearish divergence is what we're looking for. In this case, we can get some biases of where we would want to see price closing. If we take a look at this RSI read at 76.79, we need to see where price would be for RSI to avoid a bearish, a regular bearish divergence forming. And we can just go one tick above that to 77. And let's go ahead and just pull the extreme zone here that's normally at an 80. Or, well, it should be an 80. So we're going to go 77, though, and take a look at what that number would be to beat getting a drive of bearish divergence. And in this case, we would need to see closes above, by the end of the month, 103,919. So basically $104,000. So if Bitcoin does close above the top side of the zone's resistance that it's in between 101 and 104, then we could see Bitcoin avoid a drive of regular bearish divergence, and get maybe marching on to the upside, testing the highs and higher. Let's go ahead and reset this to the 80 read. Give me one moment here. There we go. Yeah, and other than that, let's just go ahead and define some criteria for the weekly. I'm not like completely bearish on this. It's just not a great look for bulls not to start kicking off some more expansion here. Makes me think that this is going to be a grind, sideways and up grind, and that's not bearish. That's it's difficult for market participants, not me personally. I love trading ranges that are expanding or widening ranges of volatility, but it usually chops people up and out of the market, which makes me a little sad. I'd like to see I'd like to see the bulls, get a piece more here on some volatile upside moves. So if you're bullish, go ahead and pray to Bula Jesus, as one Eric Crown would say, for some green dildos to the upside. The Bulls took it on the nose here with the Bears pushing them down and sideways for about shit 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 months before really starting to move back to the upside. And this one wasn't even great for a lot of bulls because they were too scared to go and long it before the move up. And you don't want the Bears getting one over on you on this one, right, bulls? But in this case, nothing too crazy though. Let's go check on the weekly and define some criteria for what we would like to see. Closes above 97,153 will turn momentum back to the upside here on the weekly. This is the other thing. I mentioned this on Monday, but you don't want to see Bitcoin closing below the upper first standard deviation here at 101,660, we'll call it. Because it's going to start looking like this wants to paint not just a swing and possible closing lower high, but if it does close anywhere this week below 99.4, so watch the Sunday candle. We do have the Saturday candle open. Bulls, you don't want to see closes below 99.4. That's going to indicate that Bitcoin's going to test down further. That would also be a lower high close, but with a higher high swing. That kind of a setup is not like a death knell, but it does mean that we're going to see tests further down. And then you have to watch the higher low structure here on the weekly at $89,000. And you could even take that 93.5 or just over 93.5 here is like you don't want to see closes below there because then price is likely going to test down further. And maybe even hit that basis band on the weekly, which is coming in at $86,000 here. So, yeah, bulls, you don't want to see that. That's going to start looking like the exact chop that I would be expecting from what I'm seeing on the monthly close. That was kind of a weak monthly close, bulls. I'm not going to lie. Could have pushed above that upper second. It wasn't. It was right there. You were already on top of it and gave it up on a Friday. But we would have a few things confirming on Sunday if Bitcoin closes here or higher. And that would be that it would close above the upper first, which gives it another week to preserve itself. The upper first will likely be above a close open if it closes right here, right now, but it would give it a week to kind of sort itself out. We would get another initial cross up on it closes above 97,153. For momentum, we would need to see follow through in the following weekly. So the first week of February, we would need to see a close above the pivot, and that would start to look pretty good. That this is just some sideways chop, and then Bitcoin can play back up to possibly the upper second standard deviation here, 117,358. This is going to update on Sunday, likely going to be around 120. Then above there, we have the upper third standard deviation at 133. So about $1,000 over the monthly's upper third. One of the things that I did want to see, of course, and I mentioned this before, lower first standard deviation is now starting to get towards the top side of the previous consolidation range here at around $70,000. That is something we want to see for a volatility level to start getting above there, this being the first standard deviation to the downside. And then the lower second, we want to see above this last low that initiated that move. Right, so we had the lower low close, higher low swing, then we had a trend break above this lower high, and then higher low, higher high, higher low. You don't want to see lower highs right here. It's just going to spell consolidation, quite honestly. And we are seeing a cool down on the weekly, but we're going to get a lot of information on that daily when it does start to get expansion again. I've often had people ask me like, oh, well, what if it doesn't expand? Well, then that just means that the bands are going to get tighter and tighter around price, and price is just grinding sideways. Otherwise, known as like crab price action, just sideways price action. Likely trendless or setting up trend reversals, but never hitting full trend to either side. So, yeah, you all have a wonderful weekend. I will talk to you again, of course, on Monday, and we're going to have a few things to cover based on how the weekly closes. Yeah, you have a wonderful morning, afternoon, and evening, no matter where you are in the world. Please trade safe. And of course, as always, stay safe. With all of that being said, Landy out. Take care.